Everyone can see that?
Yes.
Perfect. There we go. So with the past month of rain, we are finally seeing some relief throughout the system. We started to see our tributaries stabilize at normal conditions. Flows and levels throughout the watershed have responded well, and lake levels are now holding at or slightly above summer targets. We will be keeping these lakes at the higher end of their targets ranges just to sustain flows downstream as much as possible. The rain received in the past 2 weeks has increased levels in the upper watershed lakes. We have operated multiple dams to respond to these increased flows. This has helped increase flows downstream into Crotch Lake, allowing for the lake level to increase almost 20 centimeters in the past 2 weeks, which is wonderful. So Crotch Lake is now sitting above target level for this time of year, and has now created a more sustainable look for the rest of the summer. With Crotch Lake back on track and flows out of the lake, the flows out of the lake have increased to 5 CMS. From the past, we were pushing 3 CMS, so now we're up to 5. And this is benefiting the lower reach of the river, especially levels on Dalhousie Lake, which has increased almost over 20 centimeters in the last 2 weeks as well. And Mississippi Lake, which has increased about over 5 centimeters. So any additional rainfall or log ops done upstream will only benefit the system more and increase that flow rate out of Crotch Lake. So conditions have improved enough across the watershed to declare the end of the current low water level 1 status, which was terminated on a Monday. So, and with that relief, we're in good shape for the rest of the summer. Although August may look warmer and not a lot of rain, we don't have to depend as much on the weather forecast as we have earlier in the spring, or in the earlier summer, spring. Now we can utilize Crotch Lake more to augment the flows and draw down that lake at a more steady rate, alleviating any low water issues downstream. So as of right now, we are very optimistic that we can sustain current conditions right into the fall. And that is everything. Any questions?
If you could just put your screen down, Jennifer, that would be
sure.
That would be great. Phil, go ahead.
Yeah, is the airport rainfall representative of the whole watershed? Like, you usually get the same amount in the western edge of the watershed as you'd get at the airport?
Yes, we actually have more rain in the western part of the watershed than what was showing at the airport. So yeah, we actually are in more in line with the average amount of rain already and some are already above average in some of our gauges, above average rain amounts for July already.
That's wonderful. Could I ask one further question, Mr. Chairman?
Go right ahead.
Your report mentioned that you'd move from 3 cubic meters per second out of Crotch Lake up to 5, and you said it'll be sustained. Is it sustained at 5 or sustained at 3?
It's sustained at 5 now. So, and any kind of additional rainfall or any additional flows will just add to that. So it could go up to from like 6 to 10 CMS could be coming out of Crotch. It all depends on what's available and how much time we have left. So the farther we can kind of sustain the the level we have now at Crotch, the better it'll be. Well, the more water we'll see throughout the rest of the summer.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead, John.
Thanks, Chair. I guess a question perhaps for you, Sally, more than Jennifer. With extreme weather becoming more a feature, are there any warning protocols that MVCA has in place or might consider in terms of people going to particular conservation areas, or is that strictly up to individuals to manage on their own?
I would tend to say the latter. Certainly, we haven't put anything in place. I'm thinking it's really not something that we have done in the past, to my knowledge. I think relying on Environment Canada for those kind of warnings.
For the weather warnings, yes.
Yeah. Now, as it relates to increases in flows and risk of flooding and that sort of thing, you know, if we're getting indications that there could be a significant event, certainly if we have enough lead time, that's always the other thing, right, in all of these, certainly we're able to issue warnings in accordance with our flood forecasting warning system. You know, it would just form part of our normal warnings. Is that fairly accurate there, Jen, in terms of if you're given enough lead time and we're able to assess the impact? Yeah.
Yes. And the issue arises is when weather forecasts aren't that predictable, so they could change very quickly. So even when a big event's coming, we have to be cautious about what kind of warning we put out until we see some sort of additional kind of multiple people, like multiple sources indicating the same risk, and then we kind of go from there.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Krista, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Jennifer, I just had, excuse me, I just have one question at, I guess first just one comment, and it's a totally different report than we received a month ago. And I think we're all really grateful for that, because it felt like we were looking at another pretty terrible summer in terms of water levels. So, so really good to see this. My one question is just in the report, it says 60%, the flows are 60% below normal. And I think in the slide it had said 70% below. Is it actually 60% below and 70% below, or is it 60% of seasonal averages?
Of the seasonal average. So
Okay,
right
so
now
we're getting
sitting,
better.
yeah, right now we're sitting at 70%. So I updated it to what current conditions as of today.
Okay.
So things have improved with all the rain we've received. And right now, being at 70% from the average is very good, considering some years you have extremely wet summer and some years you have extremely dry summer. So anywhere kind of in the 20 to 30% range of that kind of average is we're doing well. So we're very much happy with what flow is coming through them. That's the main system. At the below end is at 70. So the upper end is higher because it has more of the reservoirs feeding it. So that's the below end coming out of Crotch. Ferguson Falls is where that main number is coming from. So it's very good for our main system. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that clarification. I just, I was tripping just, I think, on the way the phrase was written. And then when I saw 70%, it felt like, oh, we're going the wrong direction, but you've clarified that for me. So thank you for that.
Any other questions for Jennifer? Well, I can tell you that in Carleton Place, the fishers are certainly happy because the fish are back and they're pulling them out of the river quite heavily right now. And it was good to see. We just need more water to flush through the system to help our beaches out. They're in rough shape right now with all of the rain and the runoff.
Yeah.
So thanks for your report, Jennifer.
No problem. Have a
It's
great
nice.
day.
It's always nice getting good news.
Yes.
So next on the agenda, we have the draft Mississippi River Watershed Plan up for final approval. Finally, hooray. So I'll just start off with a motion before we get into discussion. Resolved that the Board of Directors approve the Mississippi River Watershed Plan as amended. Could I have a mover for this, please? Take Paul Kehoe, seconded by Bev Holmes. Sally, did you want to say anything before we get into discussion?
Just that it was a ambitious project. Lots of people contributed to it. I think what we have before us now is a terrific document that will serve us well. I'd like to thank John Carreau for chairing the Public Advisory Committee and helping work with staff over the duration of the project. Your input was very much appreciated. And I look forward to, working with the board going forward to help to implement this plan going forward in the years to come. I would also, I almost didn't thank Allison. Allison, who is on a rightly deserved vacation right now, somewhere on Crotch Lake, as a matter of fact, is the author of this document. And I think kudos to her and all the people that supported her in putting, managing this process and putting this together for us. So thank you to Allison as well.
Phil.
Yes, I just endorse what Sally has said. One of my staff came back and her children had gone to Crotch Lake, and she was very economical and very nice. No services like water and septic tank and that sort of thing if you have a camper, but really a wonderful, lovely place to camp. So I'll pass that along to members. I haven't been there camping, but a good report from the community. Thank you.
I'd like to echo what Sally said, thanking John for the work on the community consultation that went into this. And I'm happy to see that just in the amended report and the commitment to follow through with the engagement of Indigenous communities on the watershed as a follow through, because it was something that was missed just because of the times and the circumstances, and having those important communities on the watershed included, I think, is vital to the long-term implementation of the report, and it's important for us to carry on that way. Phil, and then John.
Yes, I too would like to thank John for consulting with Indigenous people. It's an important one. I sent you a little note of a YouTube where there was a confrontation between the Indigenous people and the local cottagers, and it's a bit of a mess. So if we can work things out so that everybody gets what they need, that should be possible. But so the important part of it is you gotta talk to the people, and you don't always get a fast answer. So I congratulate John on his patience and all that sort of stuff. Thanks, John.
John, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, most of the consultations with First Nations have really been through staff and their consultants, but I too look forward to the larger and more active engagement with our First Nation colleagues. I wanted to add that one of the immediate benefits of having the draft watershed plan was through a contact that Janet put me in touch with the chair of Eastern Ontario for Ducks Unlimited. And they were very interested as to how the Public Advisory Committee had worked. And as we speak, Ducks Unlimited is looking at opportunities to work with the agricultural community to really build upon one of those key sets of recommendations in the watershed plan, which is, how to find that kind of concrete demonstration of what a good partnership can achieve where there's mutual benefit. So I too think that the watershed plan will serve us well. It has legs. And Sally, I was interested to get some additional feedback from you as to when you've been talking to our municipal partners as to any further reaction or feedback from them as to the utility of the watershed plan, or perhaps some of the priorities they feel should be perhaps dealt with on a priority basis. Thank you.
So I've gone to about half of our councils now, and the feedback I've received is not of that nature. I think people are finding what I'm presenting interesting. They are interested in going, seeing how this moves forward. At one council, there was, some concern about there's a lot in this document, and there's a price tag attached to all of these things, of course, and therefore it'll be important for the authority working with our member municipalities to set priorities and determine, what we want to tackle first. But overall, I think most of the engagement we got was in earlier parts of the process, and that when people have been reviewing this document, they're sort of nodding their heads and saying, yep, it's all there. We haven't actually got, during this very last round, as much input as we have previously, and yet we've circulated all the same people. So we've got a few kudoses saying, yep, great, looks good. And that's about it. A few comments, obviously, which Allison addressed and we modified.
Phil, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is an excellent plan. It does. I noticed the report says it covers 42,000 people in the area. In the Ottawa area, just Canada alone has about 2.5 times that, and so on. I gather there in the carp watershed, is there a plan to do something similar to that for the carp? There aren't as many dangers in terms of they're worried about septic tanks and stuff like that. That's not as prevalent because, of course, we have more people on municipal water and sewer. But things like, it always concerned me that even in Ottawa, they tend to replace like with like for culverts. And maybe in the light of the big storms we've had on occasion, it'd be appropriate to, if somebody with prestige were to say, an organization with prestige like the Conservation Order, perhaps it's time to upgrade by 10 or 15%. I don't know what the right number is, but I mean, that's the kind of thing I think might be helpful. Thank you.
So I can respond to that. Janet and I have actually been talking about this, and I reached out to the City of Ottawa because as we move through this year into next, of course, next year's municipal election, and at the City of Ottawa, staff are tasked with coming up with the next term of council priorities. So during, starting in January of next year, staff will be tasked with putting forward proposals as priorities for next term of council. So I approached staff about this and said, hey, could you get update of the Carp River subwatershed plan as potential term of council priority for next on next year's list? And they have since come back to me, and I'm not sure if I followed up with you on this, Janet, because it just happened last week, that they're going to be putting forward a recommendation that a review of all the subwatersheds and watershed plans be undertaken, and that they be prioritized and undertaken in order of priority, which from their perspective, I can understand why they would want to do that. So we did at least get them to get that as a potential priority, but whether or not we actually get the CARP updated next term of council remains to be seen. But we're working on that.
Thank you.
Again, keep forgetting to turn off my mute. Are there any other questions or comments? None. We can move to the main motion. Moved by Paul Kehoe, seconded by Bev Holmes, that the Board of Directors approve the Mississippi River Watershed Plan as amended. All in favor? Any opposed? No, that was carried unanimously. The next item we have on the agenda is regarding upgrades to the boardroom equipment to facilitate blending of remote and on-site meeting participation. I'm going to have Sally make a presentation of the report before we put the motion forward.
Okay, so this is just a verbal overview. So you'll recall that, you know, early in the pandemic, we tried to do hybrid meetings and we could not get the audio system working. And through discussions at the Policy and Priorities Committee, it was discussed that, you know, really on a go-forward basis, we'd like the ability to have these blended or hybrid meetings where we have some people in the room and some people off-site. And the subsequent report in the agenda to this actually outlines some of the terms and conditions around how that might look. But we would have to overcome the technical encumbrances first before we could even really move in that direction. When we did our initial queries of a couple of vendors, we were getting prices in the ballpark of 50 to 75 in that range. And so it looked like it was going to be really critical that we break it out into two parts. You know, can you just fix our audio? Maybe we can get by without the video, but give us a price for the video. So, and also that we are going to have to go through competitive bids, obviously at that kind of price range. So we went through that process, and as per the report, of the 4 we approached who we knew had the expertise and ability to do the work, only 3 responded. And unfortunately, 2 of those 3 didn't meet the terms of reference. So of the one that was fully responsive, when we went back to them with some questions, it came to light that their audio proposal was actually much higher than we thought it was. So, and I, quite frankly, based upon sort of the feedback I've been getting from some of you during these conversations, I felt I wasn't prepared to bring back a proposal of that magnitude of spending, particularly given the age of the existing infrastructure and the amount that it will get used. You know, we have 9 board meetings a year. We have several more committee meetings, but we're generally talking about less than 20 meetings a year in that boardroom of that kind of this, you know, board or committee type nature. So in subsequent conversations with the one responsive vendor, and per the report, you know, us doing a bit more playing around ourselves in the room, we think we've come up with an approach that might work, but invariably, obviously, some money is going to be required. And as well, what the solution entails would be all of you always bringing your laptop or tablet with you to this meeting. So whether or not you were participating remotely or in the meeting room, you would be bringing your device to the table here at MPCA. So what this motion is asking for is, you know, I need direction from the board in terms of what kind of money is reasonable. And based upon some of the conversation that Alex and I have had with the vendors and reviewing their proposals, we think maybe we might be able to get the audio system working and allow us to use your laptops as the cameras for under 10,000. But we really need to have that one company come in and review our proposal, like our specific, how we think we want to run these meetings with them, and looking at the equipment and get them to price out, okay, here's what you need. Because while we got it working, it was quite amusing. I don't know if this has happened to any of you, but poor Alex, from what I could hear, he sounded like a chipmunk. So something with the blending of the audio, I don't think we want to have those kind of meetings. So it might be a fairly simple kind of mixer or something like that, that takes the different audio components. As well, it wasn't picking up the audio from the room for some reason. So I think by us hiring them to actually come in, consult with us, identify what fixes we might need, we may be able to get a solution for under 10,000. So that's what this motion is seeking. Effectively, Part A is to get them in to assess the situation, work with us, and Part B is if they have a remedy that we can do for under 10,000 to proceed with that work.
Great, so I'll put the motion forward. Resolve that the board approve up to $10,000 for upgrade of boardroom equipment to facilitate the blending of remote and on-site meeting participation to be paid from the operating reserve. Could I have a mover for this so we can put it up for discussion? Phil Sweetnam, seconded by, Faye Campbell. Any comments? Go ahead, Faye.
Oh, you're muted.
You're still on mute here.
You said the money will come from the operating budget, so the money is there to foot this bill?
The operating reserve.
Oh, okay, reserves. Okay, thank you.
And this is really just to investigate the options and to see if there's a solution for $10,000 or less to move forward with it. It's really just a look and see.
If I can clarify, if like I'm anticipating it'll just be a few $100s for them to come in, review our equipment and have the conversation. And then if they say that they can make the fix for under 10,000, we would just proceed. So if you approve this motion, we will just make it happen.
Okay. Phil, did I see your hand up?
Yes, I was just going to comment that I like the idea of utilizing laptops. Almost everyone has a laptop today, but even if we had to supply laptops for a couple of people who aren't up to speed on that, you know, a really decent laptop can be supplied for $600 or something like that. Whether we loan it or how we do that, that makes far more sense than going. I think your other quote was well over $20,000. It just, I'm sure it won't be, we won't have to supply that many, and it's better than going to the more expensive outlet. And the cameras are usually pretty good on these laptops. Thank you.
John.
Thanks, Chair. Sally, any thought about doing a couple of dry runs? Because often with these explorations, it's pretty useful to have an opportunity on different occasions with, you know, people using different types of computers even to make certain that the fix is there. And I don't want to change my name to Alvin.
Definitely, we will need some sort of guarantee from the vendor that the system will work, and we will dry run it before, you know, paying the final invoice, shall I say, right? To make sure it does work, and before we would put it to use at the board. That's how we discovered, you know, that while the concept worked, the audio didn't work when we were experimenting further with this early last week.
Seeing no other hands up, I know I've participated in a number of meetings recently where this hybrid was put into use. We had a lot of remote people participating from across the province, but the core board members were in the boardroom, all participating, distanced from each other, sometimes split up between the boardroom and adjacent offices, participating through their laptops, and they were able to manage the sound through Zoom. They simply it was a matter of managing the microphones and the sound systems and relying on their earbuds if when they needed to do that. So it was a different sort of feel, but it did allow them to be in the same room and have the interaction of being in the meeting space together, as is important for lengthy meetings and more detailed meetings, and just the camaraderie of the board. So I'm confident that there should be a way to manage this. It may just look a little different from what we're used to. One question that I would throw out for consideration is if the system was to work and, you know, remote participation and viewing of the meetings was allowable this way through Zoom, the only question would be for people who wanted to come into the boardroom itself as observers, and how they would be able to sort of see the meeting. If people were participating remotely, how they would be able to see and hear the remote participation, if that would be projected in some way for them, or they would simply be able to listen through headphones and watch on a screen. That should be considered in case people physically come to the meeting if they want to make a presentation to the board and have access to the full board. Sally?
So that's definitely the concept, is just as we can see each other on the screen here, this would be projected on the screen downstairs. And the only time you wouldn't be able to see people participating remotely is just as here, when somebody's doing a presentation on the screen, that, you know, the headshots would be, you know, minimized on the screen there. So, and then anybody in the room would be hearing the in-room audio, just like everybody else, which will be projecting the audio from the people participating in the Zoom remotely. So that's definitely part of the concept.
Good. Phil?
I just want to clarify, if you, the system you're proposing, if say 9 people want to actually come to the meeting and 2 people asked to participate, would the system you're proposing be able to handle that?
Sorry, do you mean 9 in the room and 2 remotely?
So 9, vice versa, 9 people come to a board meeting at the office and 2 people, it's bad weather and they want to participate remotely. Will it handle that?
That's what we need to investigate with the company, is what do we need to do to make that work? Because it won't work right now. The sound just is not there.
Okay, well, I think that'd be an important step forward if we can make that at a reasonable cost. It may, I'm sure Angela will be pleased if people who have the furthest to drive don't come and if you want to pay mileage. Thank you.
Yeah, not having to pay mileage is a bonus, but also accommodation for weather, or in the future, if we have future elected representatives or appointees to the board who simply require electronic access to the meetings just for personal accommodation. Travel may not be an option. Physically getting into that boardroom may not be an option. So it's just, I think the standards of participation have changed as a result of the pandemic, and it's certainly worth getting ready for that. Seeing no further comments, I'll put the question to the floor. That the board approve up to $10,000 for upgrade of boardroom equipment to facilitate the blending of remote and on-site meeting participation to be paid from the operating reserve. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And next, following through on this, we have some recommendations regarding the remote participation of meetings coming from the Policy and Priorities Committee. Sally, do you want to discuss this before we move on to a motion?
Yeah, so this was discussed at 2 meetings actually of the Policy and Priorities Committee. And what you see here before you are the revised proposals as put forward by the committee to the board. Now we have had subsequent correspondence come in earlier today from Phil Sweetnam with suggested modifications. I guess the key things that we just need to make sure of is that you know, we operationally are prepared and able, and that everybody knows that the meeting is going to be a hybrid meeting, and that when that kind of participation is likely to occur, that how we're going to handle all, you know, quorum, voting, and confidentiality issues needs to be, you know, very clear for all. And then lastly, as we've already discussed, is overcoming the technical issues. So I think we've already discussed the technical matters. So it's really just making sure that we have the business processes and the policy clarity around how these board meetings would work from both a logistics side as well as a, you know, making sure we're adhering to our own bylaws. So I don't propose to go through the actual policies. They're there in the report before you.
No, I think it's fair. And the discussions of the Policy and Priorities Committee they were thorough discussions. And I think there's sort of two angles to look at. Is one, making sure our policies in place to simply allow electronic meetings going forward now that we're out of a state of emergency, so that it is possible for, say, the subcommittees to, if they choose, simply meet remotely, if that's a greater convenience, if we have a busy period of time, rather than asking people to drive across the watershed, as well as the blended meetings for accessibility purposes going forward. I think the proposal outlines the parameters in which those meetings could happen, and if the rules don't work or need to be tweaked in the future, they can always be tweaked in the future. So Janet, go ahead.
I'm wondering if we can pass this until we know we can do it. I mean, I don't have any problem, obviously, allowing everyone to be in a remote meeting, but at this point, we don't know that we can actually conduct a blended one. And so I'm just wondering whether we can only pass part of this or whether we defer it or what we should do until we know. Thank you.
Sally?
I think the board needs to, at minimum, approve that we can have electronic meetings outside of a state of emergency. You know, that this is something we can do, just because as soon as the state of emergency ceases in one or more of the jurisdictions, or if there's no jurisdiction over which MVCA lies where a state of emergency is in effect, then we no longer have the ability to meet remotely. So we do need to change the bylaw at least to state that. I'm trying to think about, you know, in zoning we have holding zones where you have, you have the policy in place there, but you have to lift the holding. I don't know that there's something similar that we could do other than just pass the first policy, which is, or the second policy, pardon me, 10A2. Well, I guess 1 and 2.
Did that answer your question, Janet?
Yeah, that would be
for now?
one that I would recommend, because I mean, I totally understand the need for be able to address having these meetings outside of a state of emergency. We may all be meeting in person in September without any problem, right? But regardless, it needs to be there. But the rest of it, which is covering blended meetings, I'm just not sure that I don't think we can pass it right now because we don't know that we can do it. So I would prefer that we pass a subset of this to deal with the state of emergency meeting issue, but not the rest of the blended meeting portion. Thank you.
So as Sally indicated, that would simply be 10A is what we would be doing. So we wouldn't be passing 10B or 10C. Would that accomplish it? I'll get to you in a second, Phil. Is if we move to defer this to September, that may force us to actually meet in person in September.
Yeah, no, I wasn't quite saying that. I don't have a problem. I think it is 10A. I'm just kind of reading through this again, and I think as long as we're allowed to meet all electronically outside a state of emergency, that's what we should be passing today. Right? And then we defer the rest of this amendment until we know that we can do a blended meeting. That's all. That's what I would recommend.
Sally.
The one comment I would make is that 10A3 provides for, it's by permission. So if we don't have the capacity and wherewithal to have a blended meeting, then it wouldn't be authorized. So in theory, we can approve all of this now, knowing that until we have the technical capability we won't be authorizing. Somebody could, you know, in theory, request a blended meeting or to participate remotely from the rest, but unless we have that capacity, that request might not be granted. The other option, of course, for a blended meeting is we still have the telephone pod, which is not the best. But if somebody absolutely had to participate remotely, we've done that in the past. It now seems very gauche or passe, but that's like 18 months ago, that's
Yeah.
how we did it, right? So
Does Bell even offer the service anymore?
yeah, so I'm just saying that, you know, we can make it work. We did so previously.
Phil, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yes, I'm inclined to agree with what Sally has said, that there's a good deal of discretion in the hands of, I think it's the general manager and the chair to decide whether it's appropriate to grant requests for a meeting. So I'd be inclined to pass the whole thing, although I wouldn't, you know, it isn't worth having people rustle us at night if it's not. I don't see why we couldn't put the faith in the hands of the chair and the general manager to say, no, we don't have the technology here yet, but we expect to have that by October 15th or whatever it is that you're working on. Thank you.
John, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I think there's an advantage of going forward with the entire package, but also with the understanding, which I think seems to be operating, is that, quite honestly, all of this package is a bit of an experiment. And if we want, I mean, we can be much more explicit and say we're going to come back and visit this all within a year's time, just to make sure that it's working well, and that if we have to make adjustments, we will. And I think that sends a stronger message that we're learning by doing.
Any other comments? Krista?
Thank you. I agree with what John's comments just now. I have no issue with going ahead with it. But it probably would be a good idea whether we make note of it in the motion itself, or whether we just staff make note of it and it comes back, but for it to be reviewed, because you know, who knew that we would be where we are 18 months ago? And you know, I hesitate to say where will we be in 18 months from now, but hopefully it'll be not as many changes as we've seen in the last number of months. But you know, there will be adjustments, no doubt, to what we have in front of us. So I think it makes sense to go ahead, and then we're prepared for whatever may be what September is, and commit to looking at this again in a year's time, or the beginning of next term, or whatever have you.
Okay, so I'm hearing that that folks are comfortable with moving ahead with the motion as proposed, which I'll ask for a mover for. Well, as written in my package, it should be that the board approve amendment of the MVC administrative bylaw as recommended by the Policy and Priorities Committee set out in this report as amended, that will allow the board members to participate in meetings electronically outside of a state of emergency. Do I have a mover for that? Paul, seconded by Krista. Any further discussion? Phil?
I think I could live with John's recommendation to review it in a year, but I think the staff requirement to have a notification of a meeting 5 days ahead of time should have some flexibility with it, and I hope the chair and the general manager might use some discretion if there's a hell of a snowstorm and it's 2 days ahead of the meeting, but you'd say, yes, you can participate by that way. But so I leave that I'm prepared to support the motion as it stands on the understanding we'll review it in a year. Thank you.
And I think there's a lot of room for accommodation on the part of the chair. If there's a snowstorm or there's an emergency or even a flat tire that or a meeting going long at another council where you simply don't have the time to travel and need to participate electronically can be accommodated. But I think the warning period for presentations is there, and it'd be good. It's good to have an advisory period so staff know that the technology is going to be needed. And it may be a matter that in the future, once we've got the technical examination done, that it's just a matter of course that here it is. Here's your link. Let us know if you're going to be physically present. So there's a sandwich for you. Is likely how it will land. Janet, go ahead.
Not to be a stickler on this, but when you do read the 10A.3, it says they will only be arranged by request by the chair or general manager, a member, or a delegate. So just about anybody can request it to the general manager. I see nobody making the decision as to whether or not it goes forward. You're all assuming it's the chair and the general manager, but the bylaw doesn't say that. So I'm just being a stickler here on you. Everyone's assuming the chair and the general manager will decide. But this way it's written is it's setting up an expectation. So you need to be clear that the chair or general manager can decline it if they don't want it, if they can't do it, whatever, okay? It's not written that way right now.
Bev.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember at our meeting, we had a long discussion about 10A3 and I think what we had said was the chair and the GM can arrange that meeting without notice if there's a big snowstorm or whatnot. But if a member wants to make that arrangement, they need to give it 5 days in advance. So indeed, if there is someone calls in and says there's a snowstorm, I can't make it, it could be made. So perhaps we need to make that just a little bit clearer then. Thank you.
Sally?
I can propose some wording if that's helpful to amend, add on to the end of 10A3. So I agree with you, with Janet. It's not clear who is actually going to make the decision. So I think the decision should rest with the chair in consultation with the GM. The GM knows whether it's actually physically going to be possible, and it be at the discretion of the chair. So I can come up with exact words around that, but if people agree with that concept.
See, Janet's happy with that amendment. I think that's a good amendment. If that language can be incorporated into 10.3.
Yeah.
And we'll catch you in the minutes for the next meeting. I'm going to take that amendment as friendly. Is there any other discussion or any questions? So we have a motion that that the board approve amendment of the MVCA administrative bylaw as set out this report as recommended by the Policy and Priorities Committee that will allow the board members to participate in meetings electronically outside of a state of emergency. And the as amended is already part of that. So now it's as amended as amended. It was moved by Paul and seconded by Krista. All in favor of approving the policy with the amendment as discussed? All in favor? Okay, motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is an information update from the general manager. Sally, the floor is yours if you've got anything you want to highlight or point out.
So I will give board members an update on the transition plans. As stated here, we still have yet to receive anything from the province telling us specifically what the transition plans are to contain and the deadlines. We have, of course, the consultation document that was issued, but the details aren't to come out until the regulations are published. and indications are that will happen late summer. So we'll effectively have just a matter of weeks to draft up the transition plans and get them issued out to all of the municipalities by year end, assuming the province sticks with that timeline. So in anticipation of this, I just wanted to let you know that our Eastern Ontario CAs are absolutely collaborating on this. I've spent 2 days prepping a document for my colleagues that we're going to be discussing tomorrow morning and reviewing, because we want to make sure that in jurisdictions where you're covered by 2 or possibly even 3 CAs, that you're receiving relatively consistent information from all of us. And so even though we won't get the details till the end of August, I wanted to let you know we are working on that, and we hope to be able to, you know, turn that around in quick order. The key thing about the transition plans, if I understand where the province is going with this, this is basically a work plan. It's just showing you the approach and methodology that we're going to be using next year in reviewing that suite of programs and services that aren't deemed mandatory. And as we engage with you either individually or collectively in establishing memoranda of understanding to deliver those those services to the extent that, you know, collectively or individually or in smaller groups that you want to proceed with certain things. So, so think of the transition plan as a work plan, setting out sort of the base assumptions, and it's those base assumptions that we're collaborating around as Eastern Ontario CAs. So that's the one thing I wanted to highlight to you. The other thing is Shabamika Lake Dam project. So Phil, you know, you've been very engaged and enthusiastic with us on this, so I wanted to let everybody know we got finally our MNRF permits. Hooray! I think it was just Monday. Euro, was it Monday we got the notice or Tuesday?
It was early this week, yes.
Yes, yes. So it was like a hallelujah moment. So we have all our approvals in place. The one thing I did want to point out, and you and I were sort of corresponding on this earlier today, is you recall at the last meeting, the board authorized us to proceed with some other, the Carp River Restoration or Erosion Control Project. We put that out to, I think, 7 firms either picked up the tender, but only 2 responded. And there was a $400,000, give or take, $400,000 spread between the 2 bids. And while we're happy to take the lower bid in that instance, what that shows you though is the challenge we might face with the Shabamika Lake project. We're tendering it in the next day. And so I will be keeping you apprised of, you know, how many people pick up the package, how many responses, but, you know, it's soup to nuts out there in terms of the type of bids that we might get back. And it's the fact that we only had 2 responsive bids is quite concerning. So that's all I'll say on that.
Thanks for the heads up. Janet.
That 400K spread is concerning because we had that same issue with that consultant, right, who significantly underbid and then realized that they hadn't bid enough. You know, the one that I know the name of the consultant, right, that we had issues with, right? And they significantly underbid, whether they did it on purpose or not, and then basically held us to ransom to get more funding. So I guess the question is whether we're comfortable that the 400K, and I'm not sure what percentage of the cost that is, but whether that 400K is going to be, you know, is a real benefit or cost saving, or whether we're going to end up paying for that in the end. Thank you.
Yura, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to add on what Sally just said. We actually posted a tender for Shabamika yesterday, and as of today, we have 8 bid takers. Here we go. You know, there is definitely interest. You know, this is a bigger project, but still, as Sally said, you know, we see quite some competition for construction services this summer.
Euro, could you speak to Janet's question about your comfort level with the low bid on the car?
Yeah, so we are really at this moment, and we have Macintosh Perry also looking at it. We are comparing the two submissions. So and we will I expect a recommendation letter from Macintosh Perry by end of this week. So we will be looking at this in detail, making sure that like how this was priced is reasonable and there are no errors in pricing and whatever, right? So we are looking at it as I speak.
Okay.
Phil.
Yeah, I think Euro's going about this in the right way. The only thing I would add is look at the track record for the contractor as well. If they have a record of doing stuff on time and on price, then that's a good thing. And with the people from the last couple of jobs, say we were really pleased with the way they handled this contractor. They say, "Oh my God," then maybe they want to retire.
In the defense industry, we used to call this bait and switch, and there were companies that were known to do this, right? So anyway, I just be careful, that's all.
Yeah, but I think there's a difference, though, if I may say, between, this kind of, they had us in a crunch that we had to have the information out. Like there's usually bonds posted and stuff like that you've got to do it within the price you quote and things like that. I think there's more security in that kind of in the kind of contract that you're talking about. Euro, maybe you can help me on that. Am I correct? Do they have to post a bond to say we'll be able to do this at the posted at the bid price?
Yes, and we exercise this so the bonds they posted it, and I just want to say, yes, the obviously different pricing strategies and bidding strategies, and the low bid that came, actually the city of Ottawa, who is the owner of this project, right? They have a good experience actually with this contractor. So I don't know, as I said, there's definitely many things to look at, and that's what we will be doing in the next few days to make sure that we will be comfortable, whoever we will retain for the construction.
Hey, I saw your hand up.
Well, I just wanted to say that we had used the same company for just my husband and I, not the township or anything, small projects. And both times they came back with a request for double the money what they had quoted us. And one excuse was, well, they had to deal with the bees and the bears and the weather. We wanted the job done, so we paid them.
John, then I'll see if there are any other questions regarding Sally's report.
I just think it's germane that we do keep in mind that the city of Ottawa is engaged with this as well. So it's not just a MVCA choice. I'm not sure what the time sensitivity is, but I mean, there's always the option of, if you really don't like the bids that you've received, or it's going to take more time, you can always take a time out as well. Yep. So I mean, there are all kinds of, I think, strategies for moving forward. And even for fishing these days, catch and release is now suspect, so nobody's safe.
Any other comments? I see we've lost quorum about 5 minutes ago. Not Phil, Paul dropped off our call. So I don't need a motion to adjourn. The meeting will just be declared to be adjourned. Seeing as we can't vote to adjourn it, you're not trapped here forever. The chair comes to the rescue.
Yay. Maybe we can do that in the future. We'll just all drop out when we want to.
Well, the Democrats in Texas are using that strategy right now. Except you have to leave the watershed if you want to get away with that.
Could I ask just one question on what we said was going to take place at the Milliken Tail? We were going to do a poll there. Is that something, do we have some sort of a schedule? Because a number of people had said to me they were really concerned about the support, and I was pleased to see at least one letter come from that. Is that kind of a letter helpful in making the case to the ministry that traditional conservation authorities should be funded? If we want to get new conservation authorities, well, that's on our nickel, but the traditional ones, I think there's a case to be made for saying it should continue on the same funding basis.
Well, yeah, we'll see when the recommendations come out, because we do have a request in that existing capital assets be covered under the new regulations, and we'll see to what extent that goes if we get it, because that's a.
The question was, is it worth having letters such as the last one on the agenda, or does that really just bog you down with paperwork? Is it worth a couple of people have expressed opinion of doing what they can to be supportive? So I guess it's just creating more paperwork, useless paperwork. We won't ask for it. Thank you.
Sally?
So we are continuing to survey people at our conservation areas when we're out there. So I don't have results in front of me. I can just say that all of this information, be it letters or the results of the survey, will be shared with the board and with member municipalities, because if the province doesn't amend the draft regulation, or I guess release the regulation, we don't have draft regulation, but unless the regulation makes those activities part of the municipal levy, then it's really information that's not of relevance to the province, but relevant to you and to your municipal councils. So for your decision making.
Anything else? Oh, that's it. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you for sticking it out until the end. Enjoy the rest of your summer. We'll see you in September, and I think Sally and I might be polling you just to see how comfortable people may be having an in-person meeting in September. We'll do a little polling ahead of that, just because as things open up, we may be people may be more comfortable, and as we're all getting vaccinated, it may be possible to explore having an in-person meeting in September, and if not, then October, because I think it's been too long, and it might be nice for folks to have the option to gather again and spend some of that unused sandwich budget.
I'm gonna bring cake.
Yeah, Janet can bring cake. Okay, folks.
Wonderful.
We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye.